A website typically has a unified design, but also requires variations upon the design theme. Perhaps, for example, certain pages have 3 columns while others only have 2. Maybe you have a grouping of pages for a specific department where you want to display the department's contact information. Here's where page layout comes into play, and page layouts will be the subject of this video. There's a lot you could do with page layouts, but let's start from the beginning and take on a very simple problem. I want to create a page layout where there's automatically a place to add a headline and a repeating informational text that automatically appears. I created in an earlier video a page with a section to add a headline, which I'll briefly repeat here. I clicked on an existing section, added a new section, and I added some text. Positioned the section at the top of my layout using the green arrow keys on the sections. And finally styled this text with a global typography, which I created under Design and Layout Typographies. I'll save my page now as a matter of course. But when I create a new page, I only have space for my body text. What I want to do now is create a page layout which automatically gives me a place for my headline, and set up my site to automatically make that the default page layout when I create a new page. Plus I have a little bit of informational text up here with some dates which I want to appear automatically. I'll first navigate to Design and Layout Page Layouts, and then I'll create a new layout. Here I'll give it a name and ensure that I use Visual Designer as my design tool. There are accessibility settings here if you'd like to restrict where the layout could be applied, or at what level your Tangora Manager user needs to have to select the page layout. And then I come to an interface where I could specify section blocks, which are areas in your layout that you'll be able to add content to via page editing. There's also a possibility of adding page blocks, enabling you to embed a page within a page to combine different functionalities on one page. But I'm going to return to that subject later. There's also a button here on the blue bar called Edit Layout, and here's where you'll open Visual Designer. So here we'll be able to add our section or page blocks in our layout, or add multiple columns or what have you. In our videos on site layouts, I've explained in depth the workings of Visual Designer, so you may want to refer to these videos if you need a little help with the Visual Designer interface. We'll just keep it simple here and place our primary section for now, where we'll have our body text. The section block called Primary is created automatically by the system, and it actually has a special role. Because if you create a page which has some special functionality, like showing news items for example, the functionality will appear there where you have placed this section block. We'll return to the topic of adjusting special functionality later. So far so good. We've created a page layout and placed a section block for our body text. Next we'll create a new section block for our headline, and we'll add some dummy text to this section, and then we'll position the new section block in our layout. And finally, apply the finished page layout to our site. Now I'm going to create a new section block for my headline. I'll give it a name, and before I hit OK and place this new section block in my layout, I want to add some formatting and dummy text. I'll do so by hitting Edit Section and then Create New Section. Now I have an interface with all the possible section placeholders which we've encountered earlier while editing text on a page. Note that not all fields are necessarily applicable. It depends on the given section layout and which placeholders have been activated there. In the system's default normal page layout, for example, only headline and body text are actually active. So here I'm going to just use our body text area and then add some dummy text, which will be replaced by the headline of my choice, page for page. I'm also going to style this dummy text. When I'm done, I'll just hit OK and then close the pop-up window. Then, if I just refresh my view in Tangora Manager, we'll see our headline block. And the same goes for my layout, which I'll edit now. So now I can just place the headline and move it with my arrow keys on my keyboard to the top. Just like we saw when using Visual Designer to make our site layout, we can adjust our layout in various ways, like adding margins. Now I want to add a fixed text that I want to appear on every page. I want changes to this text to be made in this layout, so I don't want to allow changes to be made page for page. So in order to do this, I'll add a text box. I'll add and style some text. and then position it at the top. To apply this page layout, I'll need to go to a page where I want to apply it to. Right-click and choose Properties, and then select this page layout. But what I want to actually do here in this instance is to select the layout as the default for the entire site. To do this, I'll right-click on the site, choose Properties, and then there's a place where I could choose the default page layout for this site. When I hit OK, I get a dialog box asking me if I want to apply the page layout to all pages where a page layout has not already been actively set. That's brilliant actually, so I'll just say yes, and now all my pages have a place for a headline with the dummy text that I've chosen. Now, I was playing around a bit on this particular page, and that's why we'll see that we have two headlines. One comes from the page layout, and one was there from before when I was futzing around with the page. So I'll just delete my own headline from earlier and add the headline to the page layout provided headline area. So there was a basic run-through of how to create and apply page layouts. Now I want to address making changes to a page layout. Now, if I were to change dummy text back in my page layout, that would have no effect on the content of existing pages using that template. The new dummy text appears only on new pages. However, if I were to change the layout, that is to say adjust margins, add columns, and whatnot, that will indeed change on each and every page that uses this page layout. So let's have a brief demonstration. I'm going to go back to my page layout. I can do this either by navigating to Design and Layout, Page Layouts, and then by finding my layout. But another way I could get there is by right-clicking and choosing Properties, and then choosing Edit next to the Page Layout line, in which case it will open in a new window. Let's change the headline section block. I'll select the section block, double-click or hit Edit, and then hit Edit Section. Now I could get into the specific section by hitting the pencil edit icon, and then I could just adjust the dummy text and hit OK. Before I leave, I want to point out that you can, in the context of a section block, add several sections. Now I'm going to tweak the layout. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put the headline below my body text, and then I'll save, and the changes will immediately be applied to all relevant pages, in contrast to site layouts where there is a distinct Publish option. Now, when we look at our pages, we can see that the position of the headline has changed, but the text has remained the same. Only on new pages will the changes to my dummy text come into effect, and this is just a measure to ensure that your actual content doesn't get overwritten. There is a bit more that I want to cover here. I want to talk about widths. The space you allocate in your site layout for your page content has a width, and your page layout has a width, and they need to be coordinated. You can do this the old-fashioned way, that is with pixels, or you could do it using Visual Designer 2.0 with percentages. All will be explained. Watch on. I have now in use a site layout called Conferences. I can, via Pages property, click on Edit, and come into the site layout in use. Here I have placed my content placeholder in a column where my page layout comes into play to format my page content. And this content placeholder has a width. Here's how you could find out what the width is. You could select your content placeholder, and under the View tab, activate your Element Inspector. Element Inspector gives you an overview of some of the technical details of given elements in your layout, including width. Here we can actually see a point called Maximum Content Width, which is set to 525 pixels, which is just the info that I needed. So now I can close up and then open the page layout I'm working with. In my page layout, under the Layout tab, I have a width setting. Here I could choose to edit that width, so here I'd enter 525 pixels. And now this layout is optimized for the site layout that I'd like to use it in conjunction with. But what if I wanted to be able to use this page layout in conjunction with various site layouts with different widths? This too could be done. What I'll need to do then is to change from Visual Designer 1.0 to 2.0. I will go into the Tangora button under Properties and then choose Layout version 2.0. What this has done is that it's enabled me to define the width and percentages as well as pixels, where I could save it as 100%, for example. When I've done this, I get a slider, so I could visually get an idea of how the page will look when it's resized to a given size. On that topic, you could also combine percentages with pixel widths. So just for a demonstration, let's say that I create a column set here, and I want the right-hand column to always be, say, 200 pixels, but the left-hand column should be variable. I could just add 200 pixels to the right-hand column, and then 100% to the left-hand column. And when I pull the slider now, you'll see what the results would look like. Visual Designer 2.0 can actually also be used for site layouts, by the way, if you'd like to have a liquid layout with variable widths. So there you have it. We've tackled a specific task of creating page layout with a place for a headline, as well as repeating text, and adjusted the width to correspond to the relevant site layout. There is a bit more to cover to master page layouts, and that is really the topic of adding page blocks, though it is essentially the same process as adding section blocks. We'll cover that in our discussion of database pages. Thanks for watching.